Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome all of you back to another Chris Chan Quickie article. So, as I'm recording this at the very end of September, and well, with only 3 months left to go in this year, I think a bit of a roundup day session is in due, and it's mostly going to be talking about most of the other factors that we haven't really discussed yet. So, how about we just get straight into that? So, in order to do that, we have to actually first talk about a very prominent figure in like early Chris history. However, one that is very seldom talked about, and I always found that a bit strange. And I don't know if it's just because there's not much to go off, or rather, um, it was the sort of thing that Chris could confide in without knowing the difference. So let's start. First of all, troll disclosure. This persona was created, appropriated, or otherwise used by trolls to manipulate Chris. She and Emily were played by Love You Long Time. Though this identity is contrived, the quickie may treat it as though if it were real because it was to Chris. Also, it's considered just funnier that way. So, Kim Wilson, also known as Scarlet Sanctum, is an undercover troll of Chris and someone with far too much time on her hands. Don't we all, dear? She was first mentioned in Casey Call number 1, and much of what is known of her comes from references in the Casey calls. In 2009, Kim was regularly calling Chris at 10 p.m. She was played by who we mentioned before. Under the moniker of Scarlet Sanctum, her YouTube username, Kim served as a judge for the SingStar Challenge, where she voted in favor of Solid Chris. Like Anna McLaren, I should say, Kim is a frequent commentator on Chris's Facebook page. However, Anna harbors an intense dislike of Kim and has accused her of being a troll. In June of 2020, after seeing an episode of Chris Chan: A Comprehensive History featuring an email Kim had leaked on Kiwi Farms, in which Chris discussed shoving his his bent duck up his ass, Chris finally realized Kim was a troll. Sad that Chris had to wait that long, but yeah, that's the sad truth of things, it would seem. Anyway, let's get to what there is. Introduction to Chris and Casey. Prior to the Casey calls, Kim had been emailing Chris, helping him to get into Liquid Chris's email account. In an attempt to establish that she was not a boyfriend free girl, she told him she was with a tough dude named Logan, and together they had two German shepherds. Quite big dogs, I must say. Irrespective of this, Chris typically still thought that Kim liked him, and asked Casey to ask her about what she thought of him. Despite having stated, "I respect her space very much," after Chris gave Kim's email address to Casey, the two became friends. Yeah, about that. Interactions. In August of 2009, Kim asked Chris to share his PlayStation username information with her, because of course he did. He happily surrendered his username and password, resulting in his PSN account getting hacked. What a surprise! Chris, why would you ever do that? That's what I generally don't understand. Why would you just want to just hand out information just because somebody asked you to? Hey, Chris, can I have your information? No, please. All right then. Idiot. By September of 2009, Kim was regularly calling Chris. It was Kim's suggestion that Chris got a sports bra for exercising, prompting Chris to purchase one. Well, several, because apparently Chris was under the impression you had to throw away a bra after about 3 days worth of use. Lord knows how many bras he went through. We might never know, and all the money probably wasted. That month, Chris also sent her pictures of him with Ferren, as well as the infamous picture of him in the sports bra. Yeah, but Chris looks about as clever, and yeah, it's the one where Chris just sort of has his controller in one hand, his sports bra just on him, and Chris is trying with all of his power to look dignified and clever, which Chris never trust the words Chris, clever, and dignified in the same sentence. There's something missing. He also told her, inappropriately, that he had an insecurity over penis size. Well, also that, and over penis bentness, I suppose. While Chris ignored her suggestion to do a Sonichu cosplay, he would in fact later cosplay as Chris Chan Sonichu. Technically, that was because of Jackie, but there you are. She tried to get Chris to give her his PS3, under the guise that her boyfriend was a professional who could debug it, but failed. It was Kim who told Chris that Regina could just be a whole bunch of misunderstandings instead of a troll. The most notable call between Chris and Kim was one where he admitted to spooning his mother. Yeah. Along with having sexual. Oh, Chris, really? All the way back in 2010. Ew. You know, sooner or later, I reckon somebody's going to do like a list of all the instances Chris thought about doing unspeakable things to his mother. I hate to see it. I know you hate to see it, but I feel like that's like the fourth or sixth time this year I've heard that. How do you think that makes me feel? Attempts to improve Chris. I'm surprised it's as long as this. Like Casey, Kim actually tried to get Chris to improve his life. She encouraged Chris to eat right, to exercise, to stop sighing and saying whatever, to take his Lego City apart, to learn to play the guitar, to find a job, even giving him a mock job interview, and not to bang his mother. Chris obliged none of her requests. You know, the thing about Chris's mom, I think it's been covered in copious amounts of detail. But can I just make a suggestion, guys? As I'm recording this on the 29th of September of 2005, it's been now over 16 years since Chris actually last applied for work. And I think it's fair to say Chris is never going to apply for work ever again. I think we can sleep easy at night knowing that that's just how it's going to be. I'm also going to have to do like another video talking about Chris's work ethic because I feel like I can't just summarize it in one video. Real life encounters. Kim may have already encountered Chris by the spring of 2009 in a chat with Vanessa Hudgens from the 22nd of April. Chris talked about meeting Joshua at the mall along with a girl named Kim. Although whether it was Kim Wilson is currently unknown. The only information discernible about the Kim mentioned in said chat is that she was not previously familiar to Chris, he had a slight trouble recalling her name, and that he was somewhat sexually interested in her. Kim was cute and sexy, but I remain devoted to my sweetest Ivy. At one point, Chris met Kim Wilson in person, going to an Applebee's with her and Casey. I think this was the same encounter in which Chris was extremely creepy to Casey the entire way, and then, well, Chris made some very unflattering emotions towards Casey, involving sniffing her hair and brushing his nose against her ear. Apparently, they were horrified at this. On June of 2009, a number of videos of Chris interacting in public were uploaded to the YouTube account Scarlet Sanctum, which, as Chris has confirmed, belongs to Kim. Another series of similar videos was released by the same account on July of 2009. Part 2 was shot long before its release in July of 2009. The girl in the video mentions hiding from Chris the fact that she's in a relationship, but Chris was under the impression that Kim had a boyfriend named Logan a month before the video's release, 15th of June 2009. The boyfriend Logan character was created by a means to prevent Chris from being too creepy to Kim, and as a means to manipulate Chris into doing something by feeding him a sob story about Kim and Logan having relationship problems. Mentions in videos. In June of 2009, after Chris created a video called Don't Trust Any Blankety Blanks Over There, an upset Kim forced Chris. You can only guess, by the way, what this is going to involve. And yes, Chris does use the N-word in that, because of course Chris would do that. To create the apology video, I'm sorry dude, in which Chris insisted that he likes gays who accomplish other things, like Stephen Fry, who was a homosexual. But he did a good job being a narrator in Little Big Planet. The fact that Chris's only notion that Stephen Fry is only alright because he was the narrator for Little Big Planet, shockingly enough, that sadly no longer surprises me. It's shocking because, quite frankly, I I wish Chris honestly knew a little bit more about Stephen Fry, in honesty, because Stephen Fry also has bipolar disorder, and there are some days he is absolutely on top of the world. Other times he is literally at rock bottom. He's a very nice man, but apparently, according to Chris, as long if he's not directly involved in things that interest Chris, that's about it. He was also the presenter of QI for 12 years. Kim claimed to be upset because her boyfriend had a gay brother who lost both his arms in Iraq, the veracity of which was never confirmed. Not that it needed to be confirmed, because Chris believed every word of it. Chris mentions Kim in his video, in August of 2009 video, Light His Mind's Darkest Hour, in which Chris states Kim brought to his attention that his Kamehameha of Liquid Chris was too harsh of a punishment. In Tito Got No Luck Against We Brits, Irish and Scots, made on the 14th of March 2010. Did the Welsh not get a look in here, Chris? Chris mentions that he shares with the Wallflower a female friend who he nicknames Scarlet. Seeing that Kim's YouTube username is Scarlet Sanctum, this is likely a reference to her. In the video, Chris says that he forwarded to Scarlet the admissions of Sir Shaq Tito, likely referring to the email Tito sent him on the day the video was made. In the autism tutorials, Chris made several mentions of a gal pal of his named Mick. Considering his fondness for anagrams, it is not unlikely to assume that Mick is a codename for Kim. In his first mention of Mick, Chris bemoans her unwillingness to move him out of her friend zone. If she is really Kim, this would suggest that at some point she broke up with Logan, as Chris would probably not try to take things with her to the next level if she wasn't boyfriend free. In his last mention of Mick, Chris says that they do not often hang out with each other due to Mick being busy. Facebook. After Chris retreated from public view into his private Facebook page in 2012, Kim followed him there and made regular comments on his wall. Her remarks are usually compliments or bits of gently preferred advice, attempting to push Chris's socializing in a positive direction, though he does not often follow them, or possibly any of them, or occasionally some serious criticism which he never follows. He doesn't like the tough love approach. On the 5th of September 2012, Anna McLaren called Kim out as a troll in a comment thread following one of Chris's posts. Either Chris ignored her accusation or he wasn't convinced, as he continued to recognize Kim as one of his few friends in subsequent updates. On the 12th of May 2015, Kim commented on a photo on Chris's Facebook page, revealing that he is now taking female hormones. And then, following Chris and Jessica Quinn's breakup on the 5th of October 2017, Kim attempted to console Chris. However, she misinterpreted the cause, to which Chris ranted at her. In his rage, Chris remarked that Kim knows the magical man's identity. And assuming what we know, what happens afterwards, apparently Kim was ratted out by means of the Geno Samuel documentary, and from what we understand, Kim Wilson has never been heard from again. Quite a long-lasting troll in many ways, but to be honest, the most Kim Wilson really did was just sort of like leak information, some of which Chris did make public anyway, but some things you probably should not be releasing even to anyone, like passwords or specific things that can result in hacking and then humping your PS3 for Jack Thaddeus. Stuff like that that probably shouldn't get out into the public. But with all that being said and done, I hope all of you guys learned something from this. And, well, Kim Wilson just serves as the sort of troll who didn't really get involved that much. And I think she just, because it was probably easier that way. And with that being said, I will see all of you guys again next time. Thank you.